There's something strange happening in the economy right now. On the surface, everything still looks active. Stores are busy, people are still going out, travel hasn't completely slowed down. Credit cards are still being used. From the outside, it can feel like things are holding together. But underneath that surface, something has changed. Because even while people are still spending, confidence is falling, and falling fast. In late March 2026, consumer sentiment dropped sharply, and what makes that more important is that this drop isn't limited to people who are already struggling. Even higher income households are starting to feel uneasy. That tells you this isn't just about money, it's about how people feel about the future. And that's where the real story begins. Because spending and confidence are not the same thing. People don't need to feel optimistic to keep spending. In fact, a lot of spending continues simply because life requires it. You still need groceries. You still need transportation. You still have bills to pay. You still have routines you can't easily pause. So even if someone feels financially uncertain, their behavior might not change immediately. That's why the outside picture can look stable while the inside feels completely different. This is what makes the current moment so important, because when people are spending out of necessity instead of confidence, the entire tone of the economy shifts. It becomes less about growth and more about maintenance, less about comfort and more about obligation, and that's a very different kind of environment. One of the biggest reasons confidence is dropping right now is because people are looking ahead and not liking what they see. It's not just about current expenses, it's about expectations. Gas prices have been rising again, and they have a unique effect on how people feel. Unlike other costs, gas is something people see constantly. Every time they drive past a station, they're reminded of how expensive things have become. That repeated exposure has a psychological impact. It makes the pressure feel more immediate, more visible, more real. At the same time, there's a broader sense of instability. Financial markets feel uncertain, prices in key areas are still elevated, and there's a growing feeling that things could get worse before they get better. So even if someone is managing their current situation, they're not confident about what comes next, and that uncertainty changes everything. Because confidence is not about today, it's about tomorrow. You can be okay right now and still feel anxious if you don't trust the future. That's what we're seeing in 2026. Another important shift is that this anxiety is spreading beyond lower-income households. For a long time, higher earners were able to absorb rising costs more easily. They had more margin, more flexibility, more room to adjust. But now, even that group is starting to feel pressure, and that matters, because higher-income consumers have been a major driver of spending. So when they start to feel uncertain, it signals a broader emotional shift across the economy. It tells you that the issue isn't isolated, it's spreading. And when confidence drops across multiple income levels, it becomes a much bigger signal. This is where the phrase, "everything looks fine but feels wrong," becomes very real. People are still doing what they need to do. They're working, they're spending, they're maintaining their lifestyle. But internally, something has changed. They feel less secure, less stable, less certain about where things are heading. And that gap between behavior and feeling is critical, because behavior doesn't change immediately. Feelings do. Confidence is usually the first thing to move. Spending follows later. That's why this moment matters so much, because it shows what's happening beneath the surface before it becomes visible in the data everyone watches. Another reason this disconnect exists is because modern spending is not as flexible as people think. A large portion of monthly expenses is fixed or semi-fixed. Housing, insurance, car payments, utilities, subscriptions, debt payments. These are not things you can easily stop. So even if someone wants to cut back, they can only adjust a small part of their spending. That means their overall behavior might look stable, even if they're feeling significant pressure. This creates a situation where people appear resilient from the outside, but feel constrained on the inside. They're not spending because they feel good. They're spending because they have to, and that's a key difference. There's also a psychological effect that comes with this kind of environment. For a while, people believed that higher income or stable employment would eventually lead to a sense of financial security. But now, that connection feels weaker. You can have a good job, you can earn a decent salary, and still feel uneasy, because security isn't just about income, it's about predictability. It's about feeling like you're protected from sudden changes. And right now, that feeling is fading. So people start to become more cautious internally, even if their external behavior hasn't caught up yet. They think more carefully, they worry more, they question their decisions more, and over time, that internal shift starts to affect what they do. That's when behavior begins to change. First, people delay, then they cut back, then they fully adjust. But it starts with confidence. That's why this situation isn't contradictory. It's a sequence. Confidence drops first. Spending adjusts later. And what we're seeing right now is the early stage of that sequence, where the emotional side of the economy is already weakening, even if the visible side hasn't fully caught up. That's also why this is more than just a temporary fluctuation. It's a signal. A signal that people are starting to feel stretched, that their sense of stability is weakening, that the system around them feels less predictable than it used to. And when that happens across a wide group of people, it changes the entire environment. Because economies don't just run on money, they run on confidence, on belief, on the expectation that things will be okay. And when that expectation starts to fade, everything else becomes more fragile. So the fact that people are still spending doesn't mean everything is fine. In some cases, it means the opposite. It means people are continuing their routines while feeling worse about their situation. It means the pressure has already started, even if the reaction hasn't fully shown up yet. And that's what makes this moment in 2026 so important, because it reveals a truth that isn't always obvious. People are not always spending because they feel confident. Sometimes they're spending because life requires it, while internally they're becoming more uncertain than ever before.